Hello, I'm William Sanchez, and this is the Philosophical Rebellion Substack. This podcast is going to be about two papers from my new book, The Stories They Don't Want You to Know, regarding Donald Trump's criminal allegations related to January 6th. And it's important to remember the context of what happened. On Election Day, Donald Trump was leading Joe Biden nearly the entire day. And then after everybody went to sleep, thousands of votes poured in for Joe Biden and not for Donald Trump, which swayed the entire outcome of the election to favor Joe Biden, which ultimately led to his election. And Donald Trump did not believe that there was any way he legitimately lost to Joe Biden. So he did everything he could to legally challenge the election results. Well, at least that is what they claimed. The actual plan was concocted well in advance of the election, and Steve Bannon, a former Trump advisor, probably gave the best summary of what Donald Trump's plan was from the beginning. So this is from Steve Bannon. What Trump's gonna do is just declare victory. He's gonna declare victory, but that does not mean he's a winner. He's just gonna say he's the winner. More of our people vote early that count. Theirs vote in mail, and so they're gonna have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's gonna take advantage of that. That is our strategy. He is gonna declare himself a winner, so then when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's gonna be a firestorm. If Trump's losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's gonna be even crazier, because he's gonna sit right there and say they stole it. He's not going out easy. If Biden is winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit. So that means Trump and his advisors knew long in advance that he was going to falsely claim victory no matter what the outcome of the election was, and attempt to use the mail-in voting, which is counted after the in-person voting on election day, as a means to trick his base into believing his false claims of election fraud. And the American government, along with multiple state governments, all audited their own election results to verify the outcome. And with the totality of evidence the Donald Trump administration was able to find, they launched 62 court cases challenging the results of the 2020 election. But Donald Trump lost 61 of the 62 court cases. And in their single victory, they were still unable to prove outcome-determinant voter fraud, which could have swayed the election. So that means 61 American judges, even Trump-appointed judges, threw out all of his accusations because he was making them without evidence. A federal judge in Michigan sanctioned 9 of Trump's attorneys for making frivolous allegations in an election fraud case, noting that all of Donald Trump's accusations were nothing but speculation and conjecture. So those 61 court cases ended in complete and utter failure for the Trump administration, meaning Trump had completely exhausted every legal challenge he had to the 2020 election by December. And at that point, Trump was explicitly told by his campaign staff, White House senior staff, the Department of Justice, and those 61 judges that there was no outcome-determinant voter fraud in the 2020 election, and he was the legitimate loser of that election. But after exhausting all legal challenges to the election outcome, Trump refused to accept that he lost, so he turned to criminal conspirators to try to find out a way to keep him in power despite the outcome of the election. So Donald Trump came up with 2 possible plans to overthrow the election. The first option was by having Republican-controlled states, which Trump lost, decertify the legitimate electors to then instill their own Trump loyalists, despite the actual outcome of the state's vote. But when multiple Republican governors refused to subvert the will of their voters in order to keep Donald Trump in power, Donald Trump then attempted to pressure Mike Pence to overturning those state electors, despite not actually having the power to do that. So Donald Trump knowingly lied to his base to trick them into thinking it was Mike Pence's constitutional responsibility to prevent the certification of Joe Biden during the Electoral College vote count, which was happening on January 6th. So by the time January 6th came around, Donald Trump had tricked a large portion of his base into believing that he actually won the election, and it was a widespread voter fraud, which is why Biden was being certified as the winner. So through total deception, Donald Trump organized a very large rally to go to the White House and hear a speech, then walk over to the Capitol and protest the certification of the election, where Donald Trump would then meet his rally. So the morning of January 6th, Donald Trump met his rally at the White House and gave a speech. And just listen to what he told them. I hope Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. I hope so, because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people. Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us, and if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country. Because you'll never take back your country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And the exact type of strength Donald Trump was trying to exert was embedded within his actual overall political rally. And that is where Donald Trump's seditious conspiracy actually comes into play. Because the domestic terrorists that Donald Trump told to stand back and stand by, they were the people who were an organized militia who were planning to meet Donald Trump at the Capitol the day of January 6th. And multiple members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers have been convicted or pled guilty of a seditious conspiracy to try to lead a violent mob into attacking the Capitol on January 6th, with the intent of keeping Donald Trump in power. So the first goal of that seditious conspiracy was to try to intimidate Mike Pence into decertifying the actual electors based on the Democratic outcome of the election and replace them with Trump loyalists who would subvert the will of the American people to keep Donald Trump in power. And exactly what Donald Trump planned that day with the domestic extremists he organized to be embedded within his political rally is unknown, because he was not allowed to go to the Capitol by the Secret Service. So even with Donald Trump blaming Mike Pence for losing the election that day, and there being Hang Mike Pence chants from Donald Trump's political rally right outside the Capitol, Mike Pence still refused to go along with Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy to overturn the election. But what did happen was a violent riot in Donald Trump's name, and the outcome of that riot was delaying the certification of the Electoral College votes. And that's where 17 of Donald Trump's 91 criminal charges come from. Donald Trump is being charged with a conspiracy to defraud the United States because of his fake elector scheme. And he is also being charged with a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding because he led a violent mob to the Capitol with the outcome of storming the Capitol and preventing the certification of the Electoral College votes when they were actually supposed to be counted. So after exhausting all legal options to challenge the outcome of the 2020 election, Donald Trump engaged in a criminal, seditious conspiracy to try to overturn the results of that election. Many Trump-affiliated domestic extremists from the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers have already pled guilty or been convicted of seditious conspiracy. And in my view, Donald Trump is clearly guilty of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and conspiracy to defraud the United States. And I think Donald Trump should be held accountable for his crimes rather than being held above the law. So I recommend a new constitutional amendment, the Trump Amendment, which would forbid public officials from holding office if they have previously tried to illegally challenge the peaceful transfer of power. That would mean Donald Trump would be ineligible to run for president of the United States again because he has committed the crimes of obstructing an official proceeding and conspiracy to defraud the United States in the attempt to challenge the peaceful transfer of power to Joe Biden after Donald Trump lost the 2020 election and lost every legal possible challenge he could have to that outcome. And just to provide some context on the violent mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6th, I have 3 pages of quotes from members of Congress who were there on that day. Lindsey Graham told police to use their guns against the January 6th protesters and to take back the Senate. Lindsey Graham then went on to say that backpacks and other items brought into the Capitol could have contained bombs or explosives. Other members of Congress said, "This is not a protest. This is an attack on America," as they were told to lay on the floor and to put on their gas masks. Adam Kinzinger said, "This is a coup attempt." Elizabeth Warren said, "The violence at the Capitol was an attempted coup and an act of insurrection egged on by a corrupt president to overthrow our democracy." Senator Ben Sasse said, "Today, the United States Capitol was ransacked while the leader of the free world cowered behind his keyboard, tweeting against his vice president for fulfilling his duties of his oath to the Constitution." Ben Sasse then went on to say that lies have consequences. This violence was the inevitable and ugly outcome of the president's addiction to constantly stoking division. And Ben Sasse concluded by saying, "This is not how we peacefully transfer power. The American people are tough, our constitutional order is strong, and we will meet this moment with strength and grace." George Bush said, "This is how election results are disputed in a banana republic. I am appalled by the reckless behavior of some political leaders since the election and by the lack of respect shown today for our institutions, our traditions, and our law enforcement." Lindsey Graham then went on to say, "Sedition may be a charge for some of these people." So, despite Republicans quickly forgiving Donald Trump for what he did on January 6th, and despite some Democrats exaggerating what Donald Trump did on January 6th, Donald Trump did try to criminally prevent the peaceful transfer of power after losing the election and finding absolutely no evidence to back up his claims of voter fraud. And for his crimes, I do not think Donald Trump should ever be president of the United States of America. I don't think he should even be eligible to run for president of the United States after what he did. So that wraps up my 2 chapters, Trump's seditious conspiracy and the Trump Amendment, from my new book, The Stories They Don't Want You to Know, which you can check out on Amazon as both an ebook or in paperback.